I'll begin by reading the remote meeting introduction. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A 18, and Governor Healy's March 29th, 2023 revised order extending remote participation by all members in any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Great Barrington Board of Health will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at townofgb.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner. See instructions at the top of the agenda. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. That having been said, we'll officially call the meeting to order with a roll call vote. Peter Stanton.
Aye.
Dr. Ruby Chang.
Aye.
And I'm here as well, Michael Lanu. Our first order of business would be approval of the minutes from June. You've all had a chance to look at them. We can take a motion and get those approved.
Ready for that motion?
I am.
Make a motion to approve the June minutes.
I second.
And our roll call will be Peter,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Next is Board of Health questions and updates. Is there anything you'd like to address before moving forward tonight? I don't have anything. So if either of you do or don't, we can move forward.
Ready to move forward.
Okay. Next up is our public hearing on which we will review a proposed order to correct citing Housatonic Waterworks Company under the authority of MGL Chapter 111, subsection 122 and 123. If it suits the board, I propose that we open our public hearing and then we go into discussion to refine our order that we're going to be looking at. And if we can get that done tonight, or we feel satisfied with it, then we can open up public comment time. If not, if we want to just review tonight, we can certainly do that and then hold public comment on this particular issue to a subsequent meeting. So we'll see how it goes. But I propose we at least get the hearing started and see how far we get tonight. That sounds amenable. I'll look for a motion to open the public hearing.
I make a motion to open the public hearing.
I second.
For a roll call will be Peter,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Okay. Rebecca, we had talked about doing a screen share, but also making this order available for, since we're strictly virtual tonight.
Yeah, I can do both. Let me first open up my screen. I have a non-red line version that I can
Okay.
share. Let's see. Okay. And then how's that?
I can see that. Can it be made any bigger?
Can I make it bigger?
Yeah, or is that as enlarged as it will be?
Let's see. I can make it bigger.
Oh, too big.
Let's see.
And by way of introduction, on this topic since we have quite an attendance list tonight. We have at this moment, we have 38 people in addition to the 4 of us in attendance tonight. So as all of you in attendance no doubt know or are aware of the problem that not just Great Barrington customers of Houstonic Waterworks, but since we are the Board of Great Barrington, we are primarily representing them. But this issue with the water quality has been a historic issue. In my over 10 years on the board, I can remember hearing about it many, many years ago. And of course, it's gathered steam over the years, and things came to somewhat of a head last year into the fall and winter. We had some meetings, and we, as a board, looked to our resources, primarily the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards, but also town council, and discovering it or trying to understand what a local board of health could do in this matter, because our working assumption up until that point had been that there was not a huge amount that we could do, but much to our surprise, or I don't know what the word would be, but we became aware that in fact there were things that we could do, there are avenues we could approach, and we discussed those over the past winter. But at the time, the issues with the water had somewhat quieted down, and of course those all came roaring back this summer. And at our last meeting, we had quite a few people in attendance who expressed their concerns, frustrations, and we've also had a proverbial flood of emails coming in each week with pictures, videos, descriptions. And so with that, we were able to have further conversations over the past couple weeks with MAHB, and also some other cases where local boards of health have waded into this issue, have come up. And so that shed some light on a path that we could follow. And we also got further clarification on how far we could go, because I don't think any of us wanted to go through the motions of all this to have nothing meaningfully happen. So I'm happy to say that we're in a position to now pursue this order in which we're going to look at tonight and try to have a meaningful positive impact on this problem that our residents are facing. And so that is our endeavor. I would just like to say at the outset of this that this will undoubtedly be a lengthy process, and I hope that people will be able to understand that we are endeavoring to do the best for our residents, and that we have approached this issue with an abundance of caution, and wanting to be sure with each step, because it is a big deal. So with that, we can get into the nuts and bolts. We had a draft drawn up. We had sent it to town council for review. They responded back with this draft that you can see tonight. And so we are going to just make sure all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. When we're satisfied that that's the case, we'll then open it up to public comment. So are there any points either of you would like to address in this draft order we got back from town council?
I just say that I think that the edits were, I think helped to strengthen it. There was a few things taken out that I don't think would be any reason to hold back from moving forward with it. I don't know exactly what their thinking was on that, but mostly they had to do with the legalese. And but I think that the main points that we were trying to accomplish are in there, and that the town lawyer edits haven't detracted at all from what we were trying to accomplish.
And
So
I agree.
yep, I'm strongly in favor of moving the notice forward so that we can get on to the practical steps.
Okay. Ruby, do you have any thoughts about anything in particular, or?
I think it's really important to hear, we have a specialist, attending our meeting tonight to discuss with us on the engineering aspects of water testing, which is something that many of our neighbors have requested, and I would like to hear what he has to say, because I think that what he has to say is going to help us to make sure we're doing the right thing. I believe he's here. His name is James Starbird.
Yep, we'll see him in the list.
I too would like to hear his thoughts.
I kind of want to make a point about that before we
Yes.
jump into the specifics.
Please.
I think that there's two areas that we should kind of keep separate. And one is, I think that if James, Mike, any of the public comments help to strengthen the notice that we can then approve tonight, I think that's great. But I also think that I think the things that James can really bring to the table are going to be things that are more oriented towards the next steps, not to this notice. So this notice could go out, and then we can get specific about the testing and moving forward with a strategy. I don't know that we need to delay this notice, to have a fleshed out plan around testing, as an example.
Okay.
Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
I disagree with that. I think to have anything issued by the Board of Health, we need to fully understand what we're testing, how we're going to do the testing, and what the results will tell us. And that's where I'm asking this expert to help us with understanding that. If you issue an ordinance, but you don't understand the effect it has, it really is not as effective.
Well,
And I need to have a full understanding of that before I can issue anything or approve anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think the order can, the notice can request the testing, but the specifics are not going to get kind of sorted out at this moment. But I also think that there's other things that the notice accomplishes that I don't want to delay. I don't want to delay the delivery of water to individuals for drinking and consumption. I don't want to delay that process that we're asking to have happen, while because I don't, unless Mike or somebody else disagrees, I don't think this notice is gonna get in the way of us refining the testing process afterwards.
I totally agree that it is important to issue it as soon as we can. That I'm in agreement, but I need to understand it.
Okay, well, let's move forward and
Okay.
hear everybody's thoughts on this.
Yes. The name again was James. Rebecca, did you see that in the list?
Forward, yeah, it's purple, about 10 names down under Ivory.
Promote
I see it.
MHB,
Yes, please.
and then Uh, James Starbird.
Good evening, Mike.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, James.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming. We would really love to hear your thoughts on this order that we, as it stands. And if you see anything that we could do to improve it. we would-
I think it stands very well. I really, if there's any questions you might want to have clarified with me, I don't really want to comment on, what the board is going to do, but I'd be happy to clarify in any part of it, if you will, drinking water wise.
Okay.
If I may, Michael,
Yes, please.
our original intent was to bring in what's called a licensed site professional.
Yes.
And an LSP is a person who is licensed by DEP and DPH in some cases to act in their place, because there are so many water systems and there's so many wells and there's so many septic systems and there's not enough manpower on the state level to do it all. So they basically have a bunch of, for lack of a better term, deputies that they deputize. And before we brought in the LSP, which would probably be something or something similar to that, I wanted to bring Jim Starbard to you, who I know very well. I've known him for many, many years through a couple of different iterations of both of our lives. And James now works with RCAP Solutions, which is it's a national organization funded by the federal government and by federal grants. James is not in a position where he can help to design everything we're doing, but I asked him to still come here tonight to basically make sure that we're aiming in the right direction. And I'm hoping that the next thing I'm going to impose on James to do is to find somebody who will actually be working hand in hand with you over the next years. It could be, who knows how long this is going to take. But so James has agreed graciously to appear here tonight to help us to understand, so that your order speaks in the same language to the waterworks that they speak already, and so that it makes it more professional, makes it easier for everybody to understand. And one of the things, if I may, James, one of the things that James told me immediately while I was talking to him, he was just kind of thumbing through on the internet, looking at stuff while I was introducing the idea to him. And one of them was, I hope, James, you'll discuss the timing of the testing for manganese and in what quarter and all of that, because that's something I think people need to be aware of. But I'm going to turn it over to you and let you go at it. But I just wanted to sort of give a little background, because I know that the board members fully understand this. James fully understands it, and so does Rebecca. But you have a lot of people, from what I understand, that are tuning in and watching. So little background color for them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, what Mike mentioning is we were discussing the situation. I've from a distance and a little bit, I've talked to the town manager a few times about it too, because part of our work is working with small water and wastewater systems, private wells, septic. It's kind of our mandate. So I've known about the situation for a while. I mean, I'm not too in depth on it. Mike sent out some stuff, and I've read stuff on the waterworks site, as well as stuff from the internet, news stories. What we're talking about there is their sampling plan that Mass DEP has for all contaminants at water systems that are required to test. What I noticed is that they're required to test for manganese yearly, but it's in the second quarter of the year. And from what I understand, the issues start to become more prevalent probably the third quarter, summertime, if you will. So that's what I pointed out is, the mandated state testing. I'm not sure if there's other testing that is done by the waterworks, but the mandated Mass DEP testing is in the second quarter. So it might not be getting tested at the peak of the manganese, if you will, if manganese is the discoloration issue that is happening.
I see. Very interesting. Ruby, did you have any specifics you want to, or any specific questions?
Well, I would like James to give us an overall view on testing situation moving forward. As you all know, we have concerns about the quality of the water because it's brown.
Mhm.
And from the understanding is that with warmer weather, there is more soluble manganese that is in the water, and associated with changes in water use is that it stirs up a lot of sediment that is in our piping, which causes the coloring of the water. What our residents are very concerned is their health, mainly that the potable water is very concerning. We don't really know what's in it, and we don't have any regular water testing to help us understand what is in the water that they're exposing their bodies and their children to. And I would like your expertise on commenting on how to solve this issue at this point.
Well, I'll say normally for manganese testing, it's usually done at the treatment plant, if you will. What I saw in the DEP sampling plan was they test the raw water and then they test the filtered water as part of that second quarter sampling. It's not a common practice to do it in the field, but of course, being that there's a issue in it, the only really way to find out what would be coming out of the tap really would be to take a sample, if you will. Now, the disinfection byproducts are taken, in the distribution system as well as like lead and copper and chlorine stuff like that. But manganese is usually, sampled at the treatment plant itself. But I do agree. I mean, to really understand what is coming out of the tap is, would have to be a sample coming out of that tap and what's in it, if you will. Because, there is things that can be picked up, like you mentioned, in the distribution system that aren't at the treatment plant.
So if you were to do testing at this point to determine what is in the water and where is the best site for testing, what would you recommend?
I would almost recommend by, as the issue comes up, and a homeowner calls you and has the issue, get the sample while the issue's there, if you will. It seems most practical to me. We work a lot with private well owners, and it's just coming right out of the well or into their house. So it's just what's in it. It's one in it. And I kind of look at it the same way with if there's a discoloration coming out of the tap, what is in the water? The only way to really find that out is to get that sample from that tap, if you will. Kind of like a lead and copper sample. Each tap is going to have a different result, if you will.
So the testing result coming from the tap, it tells you what is in the water at that point, at that particular location. How does it help you understand where these possibly contaminants could be coming from? How do you do that? How do you test for that?
I would imagine you would have to do the source where it's coming out from, where it starts from out of the treatment plant, and then where it is on, you're actually getting that sample from, and compare the two, and maybe samples in between, without, having a distribution map and all that. It would be tough to say this site, but really, what's the difference between what's coming out of the treatment plant and by the time it gets to the customer's tap, if you will. In the Drinking Water, Safe Drinking Water Act, it's, the water it's supposed to, the water providers up until it comes out of the tap, if you will. Hence why we have the lead and copper rules that we do, which we're sampling basically people's sinks with inside their homes, but they actually are responsible up until the tap.
And would you do it simultaneously?
Excuse me?
Would you do the two sites simultaneously?
Maybe not the same time, but within the same time frame, because it's going to take a while for that water from the treatment plant to, reach the tap, depending on how far in the distribution system it is. But within the same time frame, whatever that might be. I don't know if there's hydraulic studies or whatnot of the system and how what the average how long it would take to go from treatment plant to tap, if you will. But
Okay. knowing that we have aging pipes, what is your experience with how much the pipes can play a role in the contents of the water versus the supplier?
They can, and there's a lot of variables, water chemistry, what the pipes are made out of, age, flushing routines, there's a lot of variables. But there is a possibility, that the water does change as it goes through the pipes. It all depends on, I don't know enough about the system to make any say what could get in there, but yeah, definitely. I mean, there is a difference between the water that leaves a treatment plant and the water comes out of a pipe, if you will.
Can
And there's
you,
concern, I'm not saying this system isn't the same, but there's concerns how old water age is, a lot of variables for the distribution and storage of drinking water. I'm not saying this specifically because I don't know enough about the system, but there, water and distribution systems does, change things.
if you, can you just give us an idea from your experience for those people that do have manganese in their drinking water, what do most towns do to get rid of the manganese?
Usually it's at the treatment plant. They put in the treatment for it. Green sand being a very common treatment for manganese. It is a very common issue we find too. Whether it be groundwater or surface water, it's not an uncommon issue that water systems are dealing with and putting treatment for.
And can you comment on HAA5 being in has been detected in the past? And what are the chances that that could be in the drinking water as well?
Well, Mass DEP would be regulating that disinfection byproducts. And I saw that there was sometimes that was exceeded, and usually Mass DEP would send out a notice of non-compliance and have the water system take corrective actions and public notices.
And what time of year do you tend to see HAA5 elevated in the water? Is it the same throughout the year? Is it climate related? When do you tend to see it elevated?
Usually summertime, higher, more chemical reactions because it's warmer. But it is calculated on a quarterly average. So, it's exceeded. So they look at 4 quarters and then calculate them out from there. But also, a large amount of organics in the water could also lead to disinfection byproduct issues and also water age. It's hard to say what's causing it, but those are different variables that could cause it.
And when you say water age, what does that mean?
Well, how long the water's been since it got treated to it meets the tap. Sometimes it could be a storage tank that just doesn't get used enough, if you will. Sometimes it can be a dead end in a water pipe that doesn't have just kind of a dead end, and that end of the water never gets used or flushed. So, water age sometimes they have it, or like I said, organics in the water, like having manganese in it and the chlorine reacting with it, if you will.
What's the average age of water between coming out from the treatment center and being used in the faucet?
And like at a storage tank, we like to have them turned over every, I believe, 3 to 5 days. Distribution system wise, it all depends on the size of the distribution system and how big the system is.
Okay.
But there's a lot of variables too, because you want to keep the chlorine residual from the treatment plant to the tap. So that's where like the testing for fluorine and disinfection byproducts in the field comes in.
Okay. And what is the typical cost for water testing nowadays?
It all depends on what you're testing for. I meant disinfection byproducts be more expensive than like a manganese. But if it depends on really what you're looking to test for and how many you're looking to do. And sometimes you can work with a lab and they'll give you a quantity rate, if you will. We've done that a lot with private well testing. We use the same lab for 120 samples in a year, and they give us a better rate. But I would definitely use if you were going to go forward with a testing program, use a Mass DEP certified lab. And even some labs offer testing services. They send their own people out and will do the samples for them. I've seen water systems that the lab just comes by and does the water sampling for them, if you will.
And do you know any of these Mass DEP certified labs in the Western Mass area?
There's a whole if you're on Mass DEP's website, they have a whole site for it, if you will, and you can search by different regions of the state, and we'll come out with a full list of the certified labs in the area.
Mm-hmm. The last time I searched, it was all on the East Coast, the eastern part of Massachusetts, and down in Connecticut. We don't have any locally.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah,
Franklin County's the same way. They go all the way down to Hadley for their samples, and the way up on the Vermont border, some of them.
Yeah.
It is an issue. It's not a lot of certified labs. Availability has been pretty tough with that, especially the further west you go.
And I believe that haloacetic acid testing, they have something called a method detection limit. And so each lab has their own limitations as far as how accurate they could do the testing. Is that correct?
Well, my understanding, I can't say I'm the biggest lab expert. I kind of leave it up to the experts. That's why I just kind of go to the Mass DEP certified labs and let them deal with that portion of it. But any of them will, are qualified to do the analysis, if you will. They would be the same, the waterworks, Houston Waterworks themselves could bring their water samples there and be accepted by Mass DEP for compliance reasons.
I see. What's the turnaround time? I guess it depends on how far the labs are. Is that correct?
Yeah, and what you're analyzing too. Like a bacteria comes back within 24 hours, but usually could be up to where it's for a week for analysis like this. Depends on how backed up they are, and how quick they can run the sample, if you will.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, I have a couple follow-up questions. So we'll start with the testing times, and our order that we're looking at. We're talking about weekly testing. Is that a reasonable goal to shoot for if times can be delayed up to a week, or what would your opinion be on that?
It all depends on if you're doing just weekly testing regardless, then I don't think it would be a big deal, because you're doing it weekly after weekly, so you can see the averages where it's going, if you will. If you were going to do it like on demand, then I would say, it is what it is when it's coming out of the tap. So I would definitely, if the idea is to figure out if it's a health issue coming out of the tap, then I'd say the sample, really should, be taken at that time, if you will. The only way to know what's going on when it's the worst, if you will, is to take it when it's the worst.
Yes, I think that's our goal, is to, when these complaints come in, to be able to test, relative at the site of the complaint, so to speak. Also, that was why my question was, if we test, say for manganese and HAA5, if that's we test for just those things, and we say this site A has this problem, they've complained, we want to start weekly testing at that site. Is that weekly testing sufficient, or is it over sufficient? I guess that's what I'm saying. If there's if there's time and distance and turnaround, or is a week sufficient to get the data we want to reflect what's really going on?
I'm sorry, get it. Can you repeat that? I kind of missed it.
If we have complaints coming in,
yeah,
and we want to start testing at that site, for example,
mm-hmm.
and we order weekly testing at that site, is it reasonable to expect that we will get real-time results or results soon enough to reflect. Because one of the issues that has been brought up in conversation with DEP was in the past, when they have responded to complaints such as, say, manganese or brown water, generally speaking, that they come out and do an initial test, and then they say that there's a protocol where they have to retest that sample for verification. And then it's been characterized that a lot of times those retesting will not show the issue that the first sample showed.
Mhm.
So my question is related to, is this weekly testing sufficient to capture what's going on? Or does it need to be more frequent than that if we had or is 1 week gonna give us the information that we want?
Well, I mean, each water test is it's a snapshot in time, if you will.
Mhm.
In my opinion, getting it when the problem is there and then, getting another sample a week later and maybe the problem's better, but it at least can show you the fluctuations. And I imagine this is more of a, it's not just this one house on the street and everyone else's houses are clear. I imagine it's, almost like a neighborhood thing. So you might even want to have your sampling, you might not want to do 5 houses in a row because they might not, you're kind of oversampling for what you already know if you have a problem in the neighborhood, if you will.
Mhm.
But it's kind of hard to calculate, what's too much, what's too little. It's, because you're really looking between the two standards over 0.3, it's the health standard, if you will, which I imagine is the real concern. So getting it at that point is going to kind of show you if there's a real health issue, or is it, under that 0.3, which it's more of a secondary standard. And being the health board, probably more you have to try to find and see, where those health issues are. And it's the same thing in HCM, the disinfection byproducts issues. Those, like I said, Mass DEP has has authority over those, and I would imagine is, doing what EPA, has them mandated to do, if you will, with the non-compliance orders and corrective actions and, engineering to fix the problem, if you will.
Okay.
Okay.
I have 2 other questions. I'm sorry.
Sure. Go ahead.
One is that if a street has multiple complaints, is it more efficient to test at the end of the line as opposed to at the beginning of the line?
Most likely, yeah. I mean, that's the end of the lines usually, would say where the worst water quality is, because that's where the most stagnant water is, if you will. Especially if it's not looped or interconnected with something else. It's like, a dead end street and the line just ends at a hydrant or something. But yeah, I mean, one representative sample, especially if the homeowner is going to let you in for, a street, I think with an issue like this would, be suffice, or 2. If you've had 5 houses on the street, test every one, you're most likely getting the same water quality.
Should we keep track of the age of the piping that leads to the house as well? Because there may be some interspersed newer piping associated in a neighborhood along with older piping. Does that make a difference?
Oh, definitely. A new pipe as opposed to an old cast iron. I mean, it could be a whole, just the build up inside, the material, all that could be completely different. And the service line going to the house also could be a factor. And there's many different service lines. Actually, public water systems right now are going through an endeavor of inventorying every one of their service lines right now. They actually have to be done by October 10th to know the material of every service line going in every water system in America. So, which I'm sure at this point, the waterworks is well on their way having that done too. Like I said, it's a October due date for every water system in America. So the service line, distribution line, these all have they all have factors in water quality, flushing, water age, storage, there's a lot of different characteristics. And that's before you get into the chemistry and what else is in the water. It's so many factors, if you will.
one last question I have. You referenced the Safe Water Drinking Act at the earlier. And if I understand you correctly, you said that the water provider is responsible for water coming out of the tap. Is that I'm
Yeah.
getting that correctly?
From the source to the tap, yes.
Unless they're responsible, so,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, good. Glad I'm understanding that correctly. Good, thank you.
Yeah, that's hence why we do lead and copper sampling. We actually do it at people's taps. Even though, there's a private service line in the pipes within someone's house or private property, we still sample within their structure, if you will, for lead and copper, because they're responsible to the tap.
Okay. Well, great. I don't have any further questions.
Well, I'm just wondering in terms of how any of this content could help our notice. I'm wondering if it makes sense to do something like year-round testing on a monthly basis, and then I think there's a whole nother question of how many samples and how do we decide that. And I think that might come up during, when people are complaining that their water is discolored, that's where we do the testing that's weekly, obviously limiting it to a certain number within each neighborhood. But I think that we need the potential to respond and test weekly in multiple neighborhoods when the water is brown. And then the rest of the year when it's not, and we're not getting any results that are pushing the limit, then maybe we back down to monthly. Because I don't think we should do weekly year round. I think it's more important to do to do a scatter shot around the neighborhoods as opposed to more frequency in the same places.
You can also, Peter, you can also vary that to be the second half of the second quarter to the second half of the fourth quarter.
Right.
So that you're capturing coming into Q3, you're capturing all of Q3 and you're capturing the tail. And from what I'm understanding, unless you tell me I'm wrong, Jim, I think I've been led to believe that it's going to peak right smack in the middle of Q3. Statistically, it's going to peak during that period, although it's going to still be present through the whole quarter. So if you, instead of having the expense of 52 tests, one a week, you can have it at a different interval for the low season, because I think nobody really complains, and that was what you saw when we came out for our first trip out to see you. I think that we were there in November and everything was starting to calm down in November, and it was pretty calm after that until it all hit the fan coming into the summertime again.
I think we also need to be aware that the haloacetic acid is colorless, and therefore it is not something that is related to color changes and is more related to the amount of chlorine that is used mixed with the organic matter. And so testing during the summertime is also important for more than one reason.
Right. So is there, is it possible to come up with some language to kind of clarify our initial hopes for testing in the notice?
Yes, that's why I asked about the 1 week time. I just wanted to make sure the 1 week was sufficient. Because I believe in our order, we don't have I don't see any language that specifies, and maybe we don't need to have that specific language.
Well, I guess I want to, put out my vote in favor of that there is testing through the year
Yes,
periodically, but that the concentration of testing is done during the summer.
do we need to specify that, Mike, in your view? Or
I think we could use you could use language like appropriate testing intervals as determined by the whoever it is your consultant is going to be. Your testing lab will probably be your main consultant. they're independent. They're gonna want to make sure that they're finding what's there.
Yes,
And they're not gonna, for their own purposes, they're not gonna want to have to travel out to Great Barrington unless they have to. So they're gonna make sure that that if they do have to, they're gonna be there. So I would leave that as and I'll go back through and look at the wording, and I can you're all gonna need to get together at one point, stop in and sign it. So I've got at least tonight before you all get to town hall to do this. So I can, you know, what's another night in my life at this point for Great Barrington, you know? So I'm happy to go through and make sure that we have something like that says reasonable. And Jim, do you think something like reasonable testing intervals as determined by the independent testing laboratory? Do you think that's suitable, something like that?
Yeah, or the Board of Health. As the
Yeah.
board finds appropriate.
Yeah, because they're going to report to you. They're going to report to the board. And my sense is that one of you will probably be the go-between, because you have to be careful about open meeting. And so if they're reporting to you, Michael, they may say to you, you know what, Michael, we think that we can cut this back a little bit right now. And that can be a determination the board can vest either you or Rebecca with the authority to cut it back as they see fit. And we can work with you on something like that. Certainly, that's very easy to do.
I think it's not just timing, but it's also site choice.
Mhm.
The LSP person will have to help us determining what is the site. We can't test every household, and yet we can't just say, oh, yours is darker than this person's. So we have to have some criteria as far as where do we choose the particular sites that would be most meaningful to the results that we're trying to gather.
And again, I think, Jim, would you tend to probably leave that in the hands of the testing laboratory, wouldn't you? Or is that something that an LSP would direct the laboratory to go to, or somebody like an LSP? Maybe I'm using the wrong term for LSP for this. And I know it has to be an operator.
It also might be based on you know, where you have the most problems in town. That, you know, your knowledge of what are the worst neighborhoods, and, you know, some neighborhoods don't have the problem and others do. That will always help, if you will.
right. I think, Mike, on page 5 in the second to last paragraph, that seems to be that section of the order that's talking about testing.
Yep.
Determination. I think that's the place where we could clean that up to reflect our discussion tonight.
Okay, so in there, what we have is reasonable if such special meeting. Wait a minute. Random weekly testing. Yeah, random. Okay, so it's the random weekly testing that I need to change.
Yes.
Okay. I'll come up with something and get it to you guys tomorrow
Okay.
morning.
Okay.
That's easy. This is an easy fix.
Yep.
And
I-
also, site choice would be determined by what makes most sense.
Yeah.
As per consultant.
Okay. Site choice and interval.
Yes.
Yep, got it.
Peter, and getting back to your initial sentiment of in the vein of relief to customers, on page 6 in section number 2, where it talks about water that is supplied to customers, do we want to? I'm in favor of setting a minimum amount. Right?
Yeah.
To me, it seems reasonable that we have to have that specificity there. I've had a few conversations with Rebecca about, because I asked, you know, what's the average recommendation from the government say about what a person should consume each day in water, what the recommendations are in essence.
Can I
Yeah.
share that with you?
Yes, please.
I looked it up. So this is from Mayo Clinic, and drinking water, a male is roughly 3.7 liters, which comes out to be a little less than a gallon. The female is 2.7 liters, which is 0.7 gallon. However, they also 20% of the fluids the body needs also comes from food. When pregnancy, you have to think about water intake may need to be increased as well as breastfeeding. Teens and children is usually at least half a gallon. This is minimum. So having said that, it obviously, you want at least a gallon, but more likely more than that, including cooking fluids that you put in soup and you put in your cooking liquid.
That's including that, Ruby, in that 3.7
It's
liters?
it's not including
So it's
that.
plus that, okay.
Yes.
So Ruby, would you have a recommendation for what an average of what one person should? I'd like to see something along the lines of X amount of water per individual, per household, per week, something to that effect. And that would be our minimum.
I do too. So I was thinking of 1 to 1.5 gallon per person per day.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want it to be reflected in the order as a per day minimum or a weekly minimum? I mean,
Well,
just
times it by 7 if you want. So the issue is that your intake of water changes depending on what you do. So if you're outdoors working, you will be drink quite a bit more than what you would be sitting around the house. And the same thing goes with climate, with exercise, with your metabolic rate. Some illnesses require more water than others. And so, you want to make sure that they have a generous amount of water and not be restricted, which could affect people's health.
so in our order, we're referencing 5-gallon containers. You're 1.7 gallons a day.
No,
Which-
3.7 liters, which
Oh,
is roughly, yeah, it's in liters. So it's
Yep.
roughly, if you transfer it, ends up being like close to a gallon.
Close to
So
1 gallon.
what I'm
Yep.
hearing is that one house with a small family might use a whole 5 gallons in a day, but a couple or an individual that might last a couple weeks. So I'm thinking that more. I'm just wondering if there's a way to say that drinking and cooking water needs to be made available to all Houstonic Water Works customers. Minimally providing any individual in the house up to a gallon and a half a day, or something, so that I feel like we need such a more general language but I think the water needs to be someplace where they can pick it up anytime they need to.
Yes, the scenario which I'd like to avoid is if we don't specify a minimum per person, per household, per week, then we could potentially get into a situation where the supply was
Right.
used up quickly, so to speak.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe it's 1.5 gallons per person per day. Minimum
I like that.
being available. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'll make that clear in that language for you.
Okay. The other thing was we referenced 5-gallon containers, I think I'm not sure why we had that specific reference.
That's
but
your fault. You had mentioned, I think when you and I were having a conversation, you said, geez, I hate to see a whole bunch of throwaway water bottles. And I
I
said,
don't, it came up in conversation. So
Yeah.
what I'm saying is if that recommendation is something that can fit within, I think we're all agreed that we'd like to not see dozens of single
Single
use.
use.
Yes.
This town bans single-use bottles, so it will have to come in gallon. I mean,
Yeah.
that should be in the reflecting the single water use ban, water should be supplied in larger containers.
Yes, so that 1.5 gallons per day as an average, if you multiply that times a week, that's 10.5 gallons a week. So it could be, you could say as an average, no less than 10 gallons, and that will fit well within the 2 5-gallon containers if that's a
Yeah.
as a baseline per
Right.
person per
Right.
week. Yes. Okay. I think those are the only 2 points that I wanted to have tidied up.
Does that number, if I may, Ruby,
Yep.
does that number anticipate the fact that you're gonna have households with a mom and a dad and 3 teenage kids that are out there on the basketball court coming home thirsty and all of that? Does that 10-gallon minimum per week cover the family that had, I guess it's per person it would, I guess.
Well, no, like I said, it's a minimum. It's not a maximum. So minimum means if you come home and you sweat bullets from being outdoors all day and you're thirsty, you may be guzzling down, 16 ounces times 2, or, easily within a very short period of time. So what I'm saying is that that's a minimum amount. It's by no means that's all you get to drink. Well, I want to make this clearer.
So I'm curious, how broadly has this been publicly available for any period of time, this document?
No, we just tonight.
Okay. Okay, because I'm just wondering how much and in what way we can, for the public to meaningful interact in the conversation, which I believe is going to be coming up pretty soon. How would they have had access to the content, and is there any way that we can go through some of the details?
Well, my proposal would be to clean up these 2 edits and then allow for people to have time to look at this and have another meeting where we have our finished complete draft. Because one other issue that I would like that from comments from town council is that we need to have our list of reference sources. In much the same way when we did our glyphosate regulations, we had a body of evidence that we cited. I think we need to do the same thing for all our mention of scientific evidence, and town council also recommended that we have that. And I know we have been looking at some studies and some information, but I'd like to have that on a list as an addendum to this too.
That's confusing because some of the edits that they made were taking out citations that were actually in there.
They did. They took out almost all of the citations that were in there.
Starting, page 3 is a good example. There's where we're talking about all the health stuff. Was 2 references that they crossed out.
Right, and I read that more as just a procedural. That's not usually something that's written into these orders. Not that it didn't pertain, but I wondered if that's why I wondered as if we did.
That's why I put it in, just to clarify. I put those weren't actually scientific sites. Those were cites to case law, and I did that because the last hearing I went to involving a water company in another part of the state, their lawyer got up and started screaming hysterically that you've just bought yourselves a lawsuit. You have no idea what you're doing. You have no right to do this. And so I put in the cases that say that, and I know in Great Barrington, there was question as to whether or not how far you could go. So I put that in there basically to respond, anticipating that when you do have your public hearing and when the company is there, but with their lawyers, they're going to do some saber rattling. And, I stepped out in the hallway after that particular meeting, and I told the attorney who had just embarrassed himself that he embarrassed himself and that he should go do some legal research. And they have since withdrawn all of their protest because they now understand they won't win when they go to court. So I did that preemptively, and your town council said, no, let's take that out. And that's his prerogative. Absolutely. We don't, we don't practice law. We're here to help you with these things, but everything is subject to your.
Can you list it as an addendum at the back of the, still keep it in there, but list it in the addendum section?
I'm gonna have to ask your town council that question tomorrow.
Okay,
And we will. And as far as all of the science is concerned, that would come out when you actually have not this portion of the public hearing where you're gathering the data from the people, but that would come out. You'd have probably one more public hearing where you'd have scientific considerations brought to the board about how dangerous HAA5 is, for instance. It's not quote unquote just manganese, as if it's no big deal, that it's a very big deal. I think that this board has not heard that part of it yet, and that's something that as you go deeper into this, you probably will want to hear the science behind this, and that's where your engineers can come in and help out.
Mike, is that gonna happen after the notice has been served or before this notice is?
This notice is going to be served, and they're going to come back right away and say, we want a public hearing. We want a hearing on this.
Okay.
And we're anticipating that as part of the process. And I think that that's why I did change. You may have, I don't know if you picked up on, I changed something with your town council where we said that there will be a follow-up hearing at the next regular scheduled Board of Health meeting, unless it's called sooner than that, anticipating that they have a right to a hearing in 10 days after you issue this. And they're gonna come back and say, we want a hearing. That's just the way the process always works. So at that point, then we'll hear what they have to say, and you'll have by then, Jim and I will find you some scientific minds that can come and talk to you about this, some medical minds. I have a few folks in mind, and I bounce some off of Jim before we do that and see if he has anything to add to that too.
Well, I'm hoping that we can,
yeah,
Mike, Michael, you had suggested that we wouldn't be approving this tonight, and so that there's going to be another meeting, and I just want to make sure that that meeting is as soon as possible, because I feel like this needs to be, served.
Yes, I agree. I just think that since we're making some edits, it seems reasonable that we need to have a completed document that town council can look at again and say, yep, no issue with that. And that was my only reason for bringing up the scientific evidence, is that they specifically referred to us identifying or referencing the sources, and that's why I'd like to have a list. It doesn't have to be necessarily attached to the order, but it has to be something that can be provided. A document, so to speak, that lists the case law and also lists any pertinent studies and scientific data. I'd just like to have that document that can be passed out and referenced as part of our approval of this order, part of that process.
Okay.
If that makes sense to both of you.
I was under the impression that we need to prove of concern. Besides the colored water, we need to have other evidence, for example, past laboratory testing that has been performed on the water quality, past documentation of Mass DEP written notifications and recommendation by those are the science and data evidence that I was thinking of, that legally that we would need to produce to say that there is adequate concern from this passage of what's been done in the past between the DEP and Housatonic Water Works. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not sure that we have to spell that out at this point. And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I in past conversations, my understanding was it was sufficient for our board to find, and in our opinion, we're issuing this order.
Correct. That's
No,
the,
I understand that, but,
Yes,
but I thought the town council had said that we need to substantiate scientific data or evidence. And I didn't understand what scientific meant. Does it mean evidence such as all of the photos of people sending us in the brown water coming from their water and the stained clothing? Is that a scientific data that they're looking for?
I
Or
took that.
is it, I didn't quite understand what they're talking, what the town council was requesting.
I think in the opening pages of our order, we talk about the risks of manganese and the risks of HAA5, and we reference scientific data about the risk that it has. My understanding was that's what we need to have pointed to. It's not that the other things aren't pertinent, but specifically for the sake of this order. Is that how you read it, Mike? What he was talking about?
I'm looking right now, going back through, because I don't recall seeing that language, but give me a second to take a look at this.
It may have been, you were, it was, you might not have been looped into that particular.
No, I
email.
have it. I do have it. I have,
Okay, I
have
thought
it
you
in-
were.
yeah. He's asking, where the order references certain scientific findings and determinations regarding matters of public and medical health, the board should confirm that it can identify and reference the particular sources which it is relying on. I can do that for you. I can pull that together. Because
Right.
I did exactly what he's saying that you need to do before I wrote this. I spent
Yes,
hours doing I've got
yes,
hundreds of studies downloaded in my computer. So
right. And you shared some with us, and I just want to have a document that we can say,
sure. Sure.
Exhibit A, this is a body of evidence that we've been referencing. This is, by no means complete, but a representative example.
I think I shared the child exposure to manganese.
Yeah, you had
Oh,
shared some
okay.
stuff with me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and there were a
So-
number of papers there that I pulled together. Yeah. That
But
so
as a-
shared
yeah.
that you're talking about the same thing I am.
as a board, I think we need to collect evidence from our residents of what is happening. So the more input we have from the residents from what they're experiencing is very important. And I would stress that those who are watching this, that you give us the information as far as your water quality, the color, where you live, but also the age of your piping. Those are all important data that we will need to keep as evidence so that we could put forth an ordinance such as this. So the more complaints we collect, the more we have a foot to stand on as to why we're doing this.
Yes. But I think it's a matter of, we can cite the public record of the complaints that we received. For issuing this order, I don't know as if we have to hold up the list of all the complaints we have. We certainly can do that. But what's the best way to go about that, Mike? Or,
I think that to be complete, I think that you need to at least get a representative sample from the community of people. I think that you've had people come to you during public speak and make comments before, but this is their opportunity tonight. And if it gets continued on to another session, so be it. But, I'm concerned about the fact that right now you have people who are still drinking that stuff. And until this order goes out, you give them 7 days to make sure they get everybody enough water. And I think that the penalty, which I was wondering whether your counsel was going to move to change that at all, and he didn't, which makes me very happy. The penalty is extremely difficult for the water company. It's $1,000 per household per day if they don't do it. And that's a lot of households. That's a lot of thousands of dollars. For a company that's struggling right now, that's a heck of a lot of thousands of dollars. So they'll have to take this extremely seriously.
yes,
They're holding everybody hostage and everybody's paying for a horrible product. It's
Paying more now too, Peter. I mean, they got that rate hike. And, when I was talking to Jim about it the other day, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Peter, I didn't mean to do that. But when I was talking to Jim, you know, Jim kind of hit me with the irony of the fact that, you know, well, let's see, they've got a terrible product and now they have to pay more for the terrible product. You know, it just, that's what it is, and it's not right.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that this notice gets some things rolling, and let's get it out as soon as we can.
Yes, so with that, do we want to open up public comment tonight? We don't need to do that. We can wait till we have our completed document, wait till people have had a few days to look at it, or we can start getting public comment tonight.
My initial suggestion is that because they haven't had access to this document, or most people haven't, that we keep the comments to 1 minute. And I think that what we're really looking for is anything that helps guide us in this process of this notice, that all the things that are related to future ideas, future testing, you know, all the kind of practical steps that will come after this, I think we probably should ask people to hold those as much as possible.
Okay. It could be a tall order.
Yeah, well, I would keep it brief. I really, we don't want to be here for 3 hours. I
Yes.
want to keep our focus on getting this notice served.
All right, so you're in favor of starting our public comment session.
Yeah, there's a lot of people here. They need
Yes.
the chance to speak.
I'm amenable to that. So I propose that people have no more than 2 minutes, and to keep their comments specific to this order. We understand that people are just laying their eyes on it this evening. But with that being said, know that we do want to expedite this process, but we also do want to start hearing from people. So standard rules apply. State your name and address, please, before you begin. And we will ask you to keep it to no more than 2 minutes per person. And so we'll take I saw hands going right up. We have a list, and we'll take them in the order that they are listed. And the first person will be Andrew Behrens. You have
Hi.
2 minutes. Name and address, please.
Andrew Behrens, 1079 Main Street in Houstonic. Really want to thank you for taking the situation so seriously. It's definitely refreshing, I'm sure, for everyone to hear that you have the ability to become involved at a number of levels. And I haven't read the order, but it does seem you're proposing real solutions that will help residents correct this nuisance. Just a couple comments and maybe a couple questions. My understanding is that the scope of your concerns and your jurisdiction extends in some ways beyond the DEP. My understanding is the DEP is mainly concerned with water that's carcinogenic, but they consider water that can't be used for things like bathing, washing clothes, etc., is not urgent. And so I think, you know, it's important to focus. My understanding of the 2 statutes that govern you is that it has to be determined to be a nuisance, which gives you that broader ability. And I think there are plenty of people on this webcast. You've gotten emails. There are plenty of people in the village that will say, you know, this is not just a health issue. I mean, it's a health issue too, but this is a very big nuisance. People can't wash their clothes. They can't drink the water. Not only, you know, they don't want to drink the water, they can't bathe their kids. So I'm just, you know, I think having that broader scope is important, because otherwise, you know, the defense would be, well, the DEP said the water is fine, you know, and so if you limit it to health issues, I think you could run into some trouble with that. The other thing is that the DEP is letting Houstonic Water do their testing. They're only doing it at 2 sites. One of the sites is at Fred Mercer's house, which I just can't understand how that is being allowed, but I don't think that's an objective way to monitor the water quality. So I think people are very concerned that the HAAs are elevated and it's not being accurately recognized. The last thing I'll say is, I know it sounds like, and I haven't read the order, you're providing for drinking water. I wonder if there's any way you could have a washateria in the village that has filtered water, or is tapping into a well, because a lot of people can't wash their clothes, and I think that would be very helpful. And then the last thing I would ask is maybe for James, we know the discolored water is not uniform throughout the distribution system, which could suggest a problem with the pipes. And it also is a reason to test at different sites and at different times. And I think he was recommending that the testing be done when the issues are present, when people have discolored water. But I'd like to know, I guess, if the HAAs are also disproportionate and non-uniform, because you know, when they're elevated, is it generally throughout the whole system the same level? And when they spike, how long do they actually stay up? And I think this could help figure out a strategy for how often we should test for the invisible contaminants versus the contaminants that cause the discoloration. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. And just for future reference, all questions should be directed towards the chair. We want to get as many comments, and we'll try to get answers to any questions that we hear. But I think our goal tonight is to get through as many people as we can. But thank you, Andrew, for your comments. Next up is Trevor Forbes. And please, everyone, try to keep it to 2 minutes. We've got at least a dozen hands up, and I'd like to hear from them all.
I'll keep this very short. Trevor Forbes, 325 North Plain Road. Again, I'd like to commend the Health Board for taking this initiative, and I agree with everything that Andrew said, so I'm not going to repeat that. I just wanted to add some information, Chair, that the Houstonic Water Company has actually stated to us, and I believe others, but I don't have that in writing, they certainly stated to us that their responsibility only went as far as the road. They did not actually say that their responsibility for delivering potable water actually went to the faucet. This is something I've just learned from Mike and Jim today.
They told us to take out insurance for that.
And they told us to actually take out insurance for that. I've just been told. So I just wanted to throw that into the mix, because it'll be very useful to see if other consumers of Houstonic Waterworks have had a similar reaction from the company. But that's really all I wanted to say at this particular stage, and I do commend you for the work you're doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next up is Jan, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, but Jan Wojcik.
Yeah, hi, it's Jan Wojcik, 253 Long Pond Road. I think it'd be helpful to have a distribution map of the area and go back at least 2 to 4 years and look to see where the complaints came from. There are a lot of different pipes in the system. There are 10 streets who have private piping coming off the main line. And I think it'd behoove you to really try hard to more carefully outline who's been calling more frequently. Are certain lines more prone to having problems? Because folks look and see dirty water and they panic, but it may be partly because the houses are older than dirt and the lines from the main line to the house are culprits, not necessarily what's coming out of Long Pond. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir. Next up is Douglas Stevenson.
Thank you for taking this so seriously. And Peter, you're absolutely correct.
Your name and address.
351 North Plain Road in Houstonic.
Thank you.
That getting the order out sooner and worrying about the details afterwards is probably okay. But I appreciate your sense of urgency with this. The issue of the frequency of testing really doesn't matter what the return is on them. They can take 6 weeks to get them back. If you're testing them every week, you're going to then know the trend of, gee, the water's trending bad now. You're going to see that trend develop. Now, hopefully it aren't 6 weeks, but you know, it really needs to be 6 weeks from May to November at this, or March to November, because we just don't know. And the other thing we don't know about is the HA5, what's going on with that, because that we can't see, that we can't taste. We only find out about that when it's too late to know about it. And I'm personally am extremely immunocompromised, and I haven't touched Housatonic water in 2 years. I paid for a lot of Housatonic water in the last 2 years. Haven't drank it. And your estimate of a gallon and a half of water per person per day is spot on with what we're buying. So for whatever that's worth. But keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing the right thing and you're asking the right questions. We just need to get some sort of resolution to this stuff. And if you take a system map that shows all the mains on it, you can identify, okay, at the end of this main, we want a testing site there. End of this main, we want a testing site there. End of this main, testing site there. You can come up with a dozen sites where it's going to tell you what's going on in the whole system. It's not just going to tell you what's going on at Fred Mercer's tap, at his
That's
kitchen
done.
sink. Okay.
Thank you. Deborah Herman is next.
Hi, Deborah Herman, 373 North Plain. I want to thank you for your efforts, and I just want to make 2 brief comments. One is a 5-gallon jug, I think, requires a dispenser, and a lot of people I personally could not possibly manage such a jug. So some people may need help with those. I'm not saying it's not a great idea, but just maybe think about that. Okay, now I'm having a little brain fog here. I'm forgetting I just want to mention that I myself invested in a very expensive filter system, and I know some other people have. So at least I hope my water is good. But, that's just a reality that some people felt we, had to spend the money to avoid dealing with this water. And in a sense, we're in the system, but sort of out of it. I do know that in my case, when I first bought my house, it turned out that, Mr. Mercer informed me there was a problem with my water line and I had to pay to replace it. So they do not take responsibility. I'm not saying it's wrong for the piping that goes from, their main to your house. And that's my last comment. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Deborah. Rich M is next. Who's ever signed in with Rich M, you can, I believe you can address the board now. Still not hearing anything, Rebecca. We can circle back to that. Let's move down to Sharon Gregory and we'll get back to Rich.
Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Okay, thank you. Sharon Gregory, 32 Hollenbeck Avenue, Great Barrington. I know there's a lot of concern about the distribution system and its as a factor to the dirty water. I found there was a map of the distribution system colored by the size of the pipe and so forth in the AECOM report of, I think it was 2021 or 22. Is it possible to focus on the areas that have the old pipe and take samples there, if that correlates with people who have been complaining about the color, especially of the water? And it seems like that might help us to, focus on what problems there are in the distribution system. I know from the early reports that HWW has been resistant in doing pipe replacements, at least as it compares to the percentage of pipes that have been replaced in the Great Barrington Fire District. So if we can focus on that in finding out how the pipes and the distribution system contribute, I think that would be helpful. But it seems like then we would need to access the main, the water coming off the main, and I don't know enough about that as to whether or not it's possible. Thank you.
Hi, this is Toby Stanton, 69 Division Street. Am I coming through? Seems I'm muted.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
I can hear you. I was muted. I apologize.
Thank you. So I'm still interested in the oversight as far as when Houstonic Waterworks repairs, who is the person that's checking on to make sure they're doing the repairs properly? And also some sort of list of all the repairs they have done. How many bladders have been installed throughout the system? Is there a percentage amount where they're not allowed to exceed how many bladders they put in? All these kind of questions are, I think, valid. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll try Rich M one more time, Rebecca, see if we can find out who that is.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Rich Montano, Kirk Street. I've been here 3 years. This is the first summer I've been dealing with discolored water, but we haven't been drinking the water because we've been aware of the halitotic acids. I just wanted to echo what somebody else said, and we don't really get the notices till after. We kind of just assume these days that the levels are high. But I also just wanted to state that, this is also starting to become a mental health issue. I'm someone who's starting a young family. I have a young child now. My wife's pregnant. And it's something that weighs on us from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed. Is our water going to be brown today? Is it safe for our young child? Is it safe for my wife? I know other people feel the same way. So I just wanted to state that as well. And when I call the company, I'm told it's not an emergency, and I've been asked to stop calling about the brown water, that it should be expected and it's not an emergency. Thank you for hearing my comments.
Hey, thank you, sir. Matt O'Brien is up next. You should be good to go, Matt. If you can hear us, Matt, you're promoted to speak. I see your hand up. All right, we'll pass on. We'll try to get Matt back on in a minute. Let's get back. Denise Forbes is up next.
Hi, Denise Forbes, 325 North Plain Road. I know everyone's concerned about HAA 5. I just want to let you know that we basically had a problem in September 2022. I had Jim Mercer come to my house to test my water. It was brown, manganese. Okay, so that was fine. He called me up and said, I'm coming tomorrow to do this test. So I said, okay, fine. So the next day, the water wasn't brown, it was white and smelled like chlorine. So when he did his test, I did a test also. I took my water and I took it to Agawam and had them tested for HAA 5 specifically. And my level was 106.2. The normal level is supposed to be 60. And basically, my neighbor down the block on Division did the same thing. At the time, I've notified all of you guys. I think you have all my paperwork in your files. But basically, the game is when the water turns brown, they add chlorine. The chlorine causes the HAA 5, and that's when the levels get really high, and it's dangerous and it's cancer causing. So I just wanted you all to know that basically they don't test for HAA 5 because it's expensive and they don't want to spend the money. I did because I was concerned. And then right after that, my granddaughter was being born and I didn't want her bathing in a brown water tub. So we had a well put in. And Jim Mercer still charges me $46 a month because they have not been able to disconnect the line at the street. And we still have a line coming in for Houstonic Water. And because I had called up and no one's done anything about it. They just keep billing me, but I don't pay it. So I'm just letting you know about the HAA 5. That's something that's sneaky and really worrisome. And I just thought I'd mention that to you. Thank you. I appreciate you, all you guys are doing. And this is great. After all these years of protests and all the problems that we've had brought to everyone's attention, I'm so glad you guys are taking action. This is great, because the select board really didn't do anything for us, did they? I don't know. All these executive sessions, where did that lead us? What's happening? I don't know. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Marine Q next. And then we'll try Matt again after that, Rebecca.
Okay, Maureen Q7 Depot Street. Two things. One, from my understanding, is Fred Mercer's home that the water's being tested at has a well. When he is asked if the water being tested is from a well, he refuses to answer. So I don't know if that is in records, town records, if he actually has a well on that property. The second thing I wanted to know, something to think about, is what would be the appropriate sample size to be statistically significant. We have 847 households, from my understanding, that get service from HWW. So if there's a number that's would be statistically significant for the amount of tests that need to be done, that would be I think good information so that it's completely valid.
Okay, thank you. We'll try Matt O'Brien again, Rebecca. Okay, Matt, can you hear us? Oh dear.
Matt has two profiles up there. Wonder if you want to promote the other one just in case that one's open.
We could try the other one, Rebecca. Do you see at the bottom of the? I'll try that one. Oh, you got it. Can you hear us, Matt? It seems you're muted. There we go. We can't hear you as yet. But we do see that you have two profiles. Now we can.
Can you hear me?
You can now, yes.
Okay, yeah, I got my other computer to make this work. I just wanted to say I'm really happy you guys are doing all this. Since you have two new people here, I wanted to reiterate again that as long as we're using surface water and basin water, we're going to be running into these problems. Trying to filter it out is crazy. If someone could take a little bit of a bold step and look to Northwestern University that just discovered pure, perfect water that's actually created in the earth. And it's 3 times the size of the ocean. This has been known for quite a while, but the universities and scientists, all corporations don't want this really to come out. This can be tested with testing for tritium by the University of Miami. And you can tell whether it's actually, and it's not as low. Their study, the one that just came out, says it's so far down. It's not. It comes up at the higher elevations. There are some already around here. I drank it in Maui when I lived there, in the middle of a salt ocean, pure water that has nothing in it. And you can drill down and frack it with dry ice. It's the newest technology. And if any of you could just take a look, you can look at primarywater.org and you can, check out what it is. And the University of Northwestern University just discovered it. 3 times the amount of the oceans that we have on this planet are beneath the ground. And it's perfectly pure and incredibly healthy. I just thought it was worth bringing up again, because the infrastructure definitely has to be redone. I tried to work with Jim to get the funding so they could just get done, but that wouldn't work. The town didn't like it. Not you guys. You guys, I think, are open, but if anybody on this board, if they can look at the new discovery, it's way far behind the science in this country and around the world. They have primary wells in Saudi Arabia. They have them in the Dead Sea, in Israel, in California, and you can frack it. You can go down to the crust and you can frack it with dry ice, nothing even toxic, and it fracks it and it comes up like a well, like what you used to see the oil wells shooting. You have pressure. You don't even need to pump it. And this is something, I know it's new, and I know that even well diggers don't know about it, but right now with this discovery that they just put on, now don't be fooled, it's not as low as they tell you. It actually comes up in higher elevations, but I just would hope that somebody, the two new guys on there that are involved with health and involved with water and things like that, that they would look into this. This could transform Massachusetts, and it could transform the world if we could be one of the first people to actually access this. We may have it in the hills right here, springs that are coming up. You test it at the University of Miami. If it has no tritium, it is perfect water without anything. You don't need, if your infrastructure is clean, the health is incredible. This has been, but they just don't, the corporations, they own all of the bottled water all over the world. It's hundreds of billions of dollar business. They don't want this to be known, obviously. State Street, and all of those, they own them. They own it, and they don't like it. But now that this discovery just came in from Northwestern University, I ask, if you're in this serving the public, that you look, because it's not even that expensive. You don't have to go down that far. You can frack it and get the infrastructure cleaned up, and we would make history in this country. Just wanted to put that out there. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Michael, just to let you know, you've been muted a few times, so we couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. There's I apologize. A small health emergency came up with my son, and anyways, please proceed.
Of course, no problem. Thank you very much for getting together. Very nice to see you, Mike Hugo. We really appreciate this. One thing that's concerning, though, talk of bottled water is certainly potentially helpful, but no mention of dermal absorption, and inhalation. Not just HAA5s, but many other contaminants. It can be just as serious. In fact, with gasoline contaminants, even more serious by dermal absorption. So it's extremely important that that's considered. I mean, when we're hearing from people that are immunocompromised, when we're hearing with children in town, really everyone, that has to be taken into consideration, and it's not even mentioned. So people think if they're getting drinking water, covered, if it's bottled water, which has its own set of contaminants, plastic contaminants, there's other things to be concerned about there, that it's a temporary fix and a solution, and it isn't good enough. I think we need to concentrate on individual better filtration units for the homes until something can drastically be changed with this situation. So I hope you pay more attention to informing people of that and looking for other solutions that can support that. We have to think about the dermal absorption of these chemicals. So another thing I just wanted to mention quickly was that I did miss the first 45 minutes of this information, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to listen to the review before making other comments. But I've mentioned this before, but I'm hoping we can go after some kind of grants that are more supportive of the people, water testing, not just water testing, but potentially helping people with wells, helping people with individual water purification systems. That's all possible if we can keep our eyes open for these grants. Berkshire Regional Planning Commission is instrumental in writing grants. They have on record helping people with water issues in other areas. So I hope you can contact them directly. I've been trying to do it, but they're not getting back to an individual citizen. So when I worked with the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs years ago, I had been in communication with them. But I think if we can do that, that can even potentially even Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation. Let's tapping into local resources that might be able to help the residents while all the other things are going on to hopefully change this for the better. So that's all I wanted to say today, and I look forward to hearing what's going to happen in the next steps. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Kathy. Eileen Mooney is up next.
Hi, Eileen Mooney, the newsletter, excuse me, 2 Bernard Gibbons Drive, which is really Housatonic. I have a question about order number 2 on your sheet. It says provide each household, and you were speaking about providing individuals with the water. I just wanted to point that out because this says it could be a little confusing. Do you mean each member?
We're trying to clean up that section. Yes. Thank you.
And I was also wondering when you're going to have your continued hearing.
We'll get to that momentarily.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Kate Van Olst is up next.
Hi, Michael. Kate Van Olst, 24 Hart Street, Housatonic. So I have a 10-month-old infant for medical reasons is required to be fed with a formula that is a special formula that only comes in a powdered form, so therefore has to be mixed with water. And I'm not sure, is the Board of Health answering questions in this session, or is this just a listening session?
Oh, we'll answer. We hope to answer them all. Maybe not tonight, but
Okay.
we definitely want to hear your questions. Yes.
My question is whether it is the advice of this board. I mean, I have not been, but is the tap water that's provided by Housatonic Water Company safe to mix infant formula? And if it's not, I would consider that an urgent public health emergency. That means that the water is not fit for a very important vital purpose.
All right. Thank you. Let's see. Up next is Burke Hub.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, this is Tracy Agumfer. I'm at 218 Oak Street. And I'm kind of co-signing what the gentleman said earlier. When I purchased the property in 2020, Housatonic Waterworks refused to turn the water off at the curb so that I can turn the water main off and have it repaired. This definitely goes to them being a nuisance. I purchased a property so that I could repair it, renovate it and rent it. However, due to the water issue, I'm unable to. This directly affects my income. And the second part is I have a question. Is it possible at all that we have an attorney create a trust that we pay our water bills into, and the funds would be released according to the completion of the repairing or the stages of the water repair project? Is that even a possibility?
Okay. Any further questions?
No more questions.
Okay, great. Thank you for your question.
Mm-hmm.
And last up is Sean Isaacson.
Shaw Isaacson, Managing Editor, Berkshire Edge. When will this draft order be available on the town's website? I mean, when will it be available for the public to review?
We're hoping to get that out there. I mean, it is just the draft, but the changes that we're going to make are are small, but we're working on getting that up there as soon as possible. What do you think, Rebecca?
This version that we're discussing tonight can be made public immediately. It's available now. Changes to it, I think that's up to you.
I did send an email to you, Rebecca, the other day requesting a copy of the draft. I don't know if you saw it or not.
Well,
Probably wasn't public at that point.
Yeah,
We're
we've only
still awaiting comment from our town council. but-
Yeah, the draft could not have been distributed before town council had a chance to see it today. So, because changes were made as recently as 2 or 3 hours ago. So, in fairness to Rebecca, she could not have done it by then. And I'm going to work on this tonight. I'm sure that I'm glad my wife is in the other room on the phone, not hearing me say that. So I'll have something to you, to your council tomorrow morning when he shows up at work, and I will get on the phone with him and try to get it done. So you'll have it sometime tomorrow afternoon, I would imagine, unless things get hung up on his end.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Sean? So just to recap, we just made it public tonight, having just,
So,
yep.
when will it be available on the website?
Probably, when do you think, Rebecca, we can get that on the website?
I don't think we can commit to a time. I think it's all pending, the version that we're discussing tonight, happy to get that to you, Shaw, but any draft that we're revising still needs to be run through by town council. So subsequent drafts, whenever we get that approval through council, it's up to the board to make it public.
So I would imagine once we vote on it and make it official, then it will be placed on the website. But we can definitely get you a copy of this draft.
Yeah, I'd like to see a copy of the draft.
Okay. If you've emailed Rebecca, I'm sure she can get back to you tomorrow.
All right, I'll email her right now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Janice Gildawi. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. You are up next.
Okay. So Janice Gildoy, I am actually at 185 Christian Hill Road in Great Barrington, which is the corner of Christian Hill by the light and Division Street. And what's interesting about my property is that I am, if I understand what Jim Mercer told me some years back, the fourth house from the source. So basically Long Pond to the two-story White House with the red door through the front there, through the two little ranches to the back south border of my property is where the primary pipe goes. And that pipe is not new. That pipe is, as I understand it, the original piping. So it could be as old as 150 years old. So no matter what's going on downstream, even up by the source, the infrastructure is quite old. So the other thing is that probably maybe since we moved there in 2008, we have been on the list of testers for lead and copper, but only lead and copper. I don't know who else is on it. But when I had asked for manganese, whether they tested for that, he said no. But maybe it was a couple of summers ago when things were really bad. Jim did come with some other testing person, walked up our driveway like they were buddy pals, which was not reassuring. And they did test for manganese and it was elevated and some other stuff. But even then they didn't test for HAA5, which was a concern. So in that meeting, I asked Jim some stuff and I said, well, how come your father at 314 North Plain Road is not having the problems that these other people on North Plain Road are having? And he said that, came right out and said that his father had a well. So And then the other thing that's really odd is that one of the, I believe it's the 2 testing sites for HAA5 are one of them is at 314 North Plain Road at Fred's property. So, it just doesn't instill confidence. But the other thing is, we're in a position where we can stay away. But it's not fair for us to be paying a water bill for water that we can't use. I don't know if my skin condition is caused by the water. I don't know if the non-tubercular bacteria in my lungs are from breathing the water. I don't really know, but it's just not instilling some confidence. But I did want to make sure you know that even at the beginning of the line, we have problems.
All right, thank you, Janice.
Okay, thanks.
I see one last hand up. Kathy, I don't know if your hand is still up, but I'll just put the one last request for comment tonight before we circle back to hear from Kathy briefly again. Otherwise, I think that will conclude. I see no more hands up, so I'll take it that there's no more comments for tonight. All right, Rebecca, we'll hear from Kathy one more time. Kathy, if you could keep it brief.
Hi, this is Kevin with you, Michael. Thank you.
Kevin, go ahead.
Yes.
Name and address, sir.
One thing I'd like to reiterate, also showing the importance with the HAA5 contaminants, they're testing levels and they do it average of the levels over a quarter of the calendar. The highest levels will do the damage, not the average, so I think we should keep that in mind. And also the dangers that Kathy said from any kind of contaminant in the water, from bathing is just as bad from drinking, from inhalation when you do your laundry and you got steam going around, and also gardening. So I think that brings me to the final thing, saying that when you're considering how much water consumption people are doing, how much they need, I think because people are using all the water for all their necessities in life, whether it's laundry, bath, gardening, or drinking or cooking, that there is a more specific way of coming up at that level. Just look at each individual house, how many gallons that they've been charged for historically as a customer of Housatonic Waterworks, and that's the amount that they should be compensated for, or that's the many gallons they actually use. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Kevin. And thank you for everyone else who spoke this evening. Not seeing any more hands up. So I'll put to the board, my recommendation is that we, of course, continue this public hearing. We just need to pick a date for our next meeting in which we can again hear any public comment. And hopefully at that meeting, we can have it finalized and approve this order. I know we have a minimum amount of time for posting the meeting. So I believe we could meet as early as next Tuesday, but I don't know your feeling on what we think if we of course need to run this by town council one last time. I'm assuming they could look at it quite quickly, knowing that we only have to adjust a few sections what we've changed, but
Can I make a suggestion, Michael?
yes.
Our last meeting that I attended with you, I think, was last Thursday, and then
Yes.
we went 1 week out. I
Yes.
think that it worked having a week, and I wasn't able to get what I needed from your town council and work on it until today. So why don't we go out to next Thursday? Then we know that we're not going to end up having to reschedule. People can work around that.
Totally agree. So does the 15 work for everyone?
Yes.
I'm assuming it works for you, Ruby?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll look for a motion to continue this public hearing to August 15th.
I make a motion to continue this public hearing until August 15th.
I second.
And for a roll call will be Peter,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well.
Can I also just have the courtesy of just one more comment, if I may?
Sure.
There were two things that of all of those speakers, I think everybody's pretty uniform with the fact that it seems like everybody's having pretty similar issues. But one speaker did point out that the select board hasn't done anything. And I don't live there. I don't have a dog in this hunt, but I do want to say that the select board has come to me. They were extremely concerned, and I talked them out of moving forward because the standard of review, should this ever erupt into litigation, the courts don't look at select boards with the same level of respect and deference that they do to boards of health. And Board of Health orders are reviewed not for whether or not the order was correct, but whether or not it was done correctly. A select board's review would be, did they have any right to even go there, first of all? And isn't there another board in town that could have looked at it? And then at that point, the court would have ruled one way or another. But this is way, way more bulletproof, for lack of a better term than that, if this goes to litigation. So the select board, and I note that Steve Bannon is among the list of people who are attending. The select board has not taken any kind of a dive on this whatsoever. They wanted to take it up, and I talked them out of it last week. Because this is really the appropriate place for it. And the other one is the woman who was talking about the infant formula issue. And it's very compelling, and in a very similar proceeding that I had referred to a little earlier tonight on another water case. There's an issue of manganese, and what you need to do is you need to find out what the amount of manganese is in the formula that you're using, find out what the amount is in the water that you're mixing it with, and see whether or not the water content plus the content of the formula equals something higher than what the threshold values are. That's the best. And I think that Jim would actually second what I just said, because there could be enough manganese in that formula that it tips the scale, and you might be way better off using bottled water now for your baby. And I say that subject to anything that Dr. Chang, a noted pediatrician, might say otherwise.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Mike.
We might have missed it, but did we specify what time we're going to continue the public hearing to?
6:30. Yes, our normal time.
August 15th at 6:30.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Moving down on tonight's agenda, we have citizen speak time. So if there's any last comments pertaining to all things Board of Health related, and also we'll take any media questions at the same time. I'll just ask that you keep your questions brief to the 2 minutes we talked about before. And Eileen, you're first up.
Oh, I already asked my question. Thank you.
We saw your hand up. Okay, thank you. Have a good night. Who's next? Sharon Gregory is next.
Just a quick, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just want to say a big thank you to all of you, from all of us.
All right, thank you. Kate Van Olst is back up.
Keep trying to click on Kate and then it jumps. So I don't know.
I'm sorry. We have Andrew Barron's up. Well, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thanks. And again, appreciate everything you guys are doing. Just wanted to get a sense for what Houstonic Waterworks can do to block this order from being filed, or what their response may be when it is filed. And also just, I mean, I'm not an attorney, but my understanding is the key here is that you guys can determine something as a nuisance. It doesn't have to be a health hazard or a carcinogen. So your scope of your jurisdiction is broader than that of the DEP. And I felt like some of the comments, I haven't read what your focus is, but I would urge you to stick to the broader comments, because there are plenty of people that would attest to how much of a nuisance it is to have to deal with the water in multiple ways. But just wondering what Houstonic Waterworks could actually do to prevent this from going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. My only comment on that is we will all be waiting to see. Okay. Kate Van Olst is next.
Oh, thanks for getting back to me. Mike, thank you for answering my question. My follow-up question is, how would I know what the manganese level is in the water that is supplied out of my tap? And is that something that I can request the Board of Health come test, or how do I get my water tested?
Oh, yeah, I think that you'd probably need to have somebody come and do that, an independent lab.
At my own expense, or?
At this point, I don't see this as it's not part of the order. I can help you to find a lab if you want to reach out to me offline. I just, as I sit here right now, I don't have any idea who does your area or anything else, but I can help you with that. But that's not part of the proceed that's going on tonight.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for your time.
But do check with the manufacturer of the formula though, because if that number is probably not on the packaging, but they will know it. So you might want to reach out to their customer service and find that out.
Okay. Any
Quick mention that the microbac in Lee is certified with Mass DEP.
We also always carry testing kits in the health department. Someone can come by anytime town hall is open and get a water bottle to then bring back to your home, take a water sample, and then bring over to your lab of choice. But Peter, there's the lab in Lee that Peter was referencing, Housatonic Basin testing and sampling.
Yes, okay. I see Deborah Herman's hand up.
Hi, I just wanted to mention I spoke to Microbac and they will test for manganese. They do not test for HAA5. They also will not send somebody to your house. You'll have to bring the sample to them. It's not very hard to get there. And I just want to echo the concerns of people about bathing, especially for very young children. You know, I have been in touch with somebody who's pregnant, who's worried about bathing her infant, and I would be concerned. So I think it's great that you're addressing the drinking water problem, but there are, as many people have already said, there's a whole range of problems, some of which are inconveniences like needing to take your laundry to a laundromat, but how do you bathe an infant with bottled water? I mean, it seems very complex to me, and you know, it's just so difficult for somebody to pull that off. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Donna Jacobs is next.
Donna Jacobs, 260 Park Street. And as a psychotherapist practicing more than 40 years, I hear the despair among the households who are receiving Housatonic Waterworks, and I share the despair. It's very encouraging, and thank you very much for your attention to this and taking some action. It's encouraging and it's a morale boost, but we're all going to get up in the morning and we're all going to wonder, what color is my water today? And every day I look at my sink and I don't want to wash my face. So this is a mental health issue causing a lot of despair, hopelessness, and anger in our community. And it's been very divisive between the government of our community and the residents of our community. So I just want to put it out there that it has an impact far beyond carrying home bottles, 5-gallon bottles of water and putting them in our individual dispensers, which I have to say is really tough when you're 72 years old to lift that 5-gallon bottle of water and put it in a dispenser. So it's a hardship, but it's a hardship that penetrates beyond what is visible, that people are suffering emotionally and suffering despair and anger. And I think that should be recorded as one of the impacts of this problem in this community.
All right, thank you, Donna.
This is a good time for me to make another comment.
Of course, anytime is a good time.
I am wondering if there isn't anything in the notice that we need to consider. Andrew Barons had made that comment, and then it just came up again about the nuisance piece of this that's not just health focused, that our only argument isn't health focused, it's also the nuisance focus. I'm not sure what we can add in there for that.
You are a Board of Health and you have to be doing it. You have to be looking at the health nuisance more than anything else. As soon as you start to move away from that, you start opening yourself up to a weaker case. I think we all understand that, and I've talked to people that live in that neighborhood who have had to replace their washing machines after a ridiculously short amount of time and things of that sort. But yeah, it's a nuisance, but you're looking to see if you have a public health nuisance.
Got it.
I mean, you can't, we'd all like to be able to cure all the problems in the world, but there's just certain things you can't.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if there was an angle on that that was important for us to pay attention to.
Absolutely. One of the things, though, that I will put into the order, if the board would like, is I think that, I'm imagining my wife trying to lift a 5-gallon bottle and get it on top of the thing without both of them ending up on the floor and the water being everywhere next to her. So maybe we should, I'm going to try to find some way to wordsmith it so that the bottles would have to be in, and I'm going to go look and see how big one of the big plastic bottles like from Poland Spring are, that, like I think that they have like 2.5-gallon bottles or something like that.
They have
There should be enough.
They have all those sizes. I think what we were trying to get at is that they weren't single use. And that's why the 5-gallon bottle came into the picture. But I think there are 2.5-gallon, refillable bottles.
Right. So I think maybe I'll try to find some language that fits in there about the not single use bottles or something of that sort.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a real fair concern for people.
Can I just add another concern? I don't know if this is reasonable to put into a legal document, but mental health is just as important as physical health, if not more so. And the stress that it has put on to all of those 847 households throughout so many years, that is hopeless and refractory to all of the efforts that have been made in the past, creates a huge amount of anxiety, depression, and I think that we can reflect that in the amount of discussion of all the people that came, of all the people that have spoken, especially those who don't normally speak up, but are willing to speak up because of that stress. I think that is extremely important going forward, and we should definitely include that as just as important a health issue as what the residents have experienced health-wise, physical health.
Okay. Douglas Stevenson is up next.
Dr. Chang is right on that this is a mental health issue, which the Board of Health should be concerned with people's mental health too. And they have become a nuisance, which has intruded on everyone's serenity here in the community. It's just completely beyond being able to enjoy a peaceful life in the village of Housatonic. But I could make the argument that definitely is a nuisance, and I would urge you to put that in. Thanks.
Right. Thank you, sir. Let's see. Lucinda's iPhone is up next. Lucinda, name and address, please.
Lucinda Hastings, 12 Wright Lane.
Thank you.
Housatonic. Speaking to Dr. Chang's point and others, the mental health, which like the nuisance, which I believe is actually, legal language about the problem, but specifically mental health, since I've lived here for 10 years, I came down with breast cancer and had 3 surgeries related to that. I also have had a hip replacement. I don't really have space for a water dispenser. People have said, oh, why don't you just get a whole, house filter for $300? Well, I have a crawl space. I don't know how I would go down to my crawl space and change the filter every week. So there's very specific things about the mental health issue as well. Like anybody who's immunocompromised or is going through chemo or, cancer. There's very specific as well as general stress of the whole issue that wears on the mental health. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I believe last up is Cardinal. You should be able to talk, Cardinal. Can you hear us? We still can't hear you. Oh dear. Well, we're not able to hear Cardinal. And I see Kate Van Olsen's hand up. I don't know if it's just been, it seems like it's been up for some time. Kate, do you have one last question before we sign off for the evening?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, Cardinal, we'll try you one more time. You just need to unmute yourself and you can speak. Unfortunately, if you are trying to talk to us, we can't hear you. So seeing no other hands up and unfortunately not being able to hear from Cardinal, we will be meeting next week on the 15th. And we will, of course, take more public comment and there will be more opportunity for people to address the board during the citizen speak time then. So I hope to hear from you then, Cardinal. If there's nothing else from the board or from Mike or James, thank you again for coming to tonight's meeting and sharing with us your thoughts.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you. Have a good night. And thank you, of course, Mike. And we'll look to see that revised order come through.
Yep.
Thank you for all your work on this.
That's what we're here to do. Thank you.
All right, Peter and Ruby, if there's nothing else from either of you, I'll look for a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I second.
Our final roll call, Peter,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you, and thank you everyone who attended and spoke tonight. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.